Live from the House of LeMay Makeup and Dressing Room.
Here comes Amber. Stop what you're doing. Here comes Amber. She's just doing what she can. Here comes Amber. Cue the spotlight. Here comes Amber with 2 drinks in her hand. The matriarch of fashion, secret sewer glasses, you can't look away. Ask her, does she do it? There's really nothing to it. She's got that feminine yay. If you have a party, or if you're feeling naughty, call up the House of LeMay. Here comes your favorite gal. Here comes your queen. Here comes your talk of the town. And we're live tonight. The music starts playing. It's time for cabareting. And we're live tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen, please turn off all cell phones and get ready for your host, Amber LeMay.
Don't trick or treat. Just order a bag of candy from Amazon and eat it all. That's my intention.
It's Amber's thought of the day.
I'd rather have a trick that treats than a treat that tricks.
Have a wonderful and scary Halloween.
Happy Halloween from Amber Live. But before we get started, I want you to like, share, subscribe. Thank you very much. Now, what do pumpkins, caskets, and beheaded Jesuses have in common? They're all a part of this special Halloween edition of News Briefs. A mysterious tradition at Plymouth State University in Plymouth, New Hampshire continued recently as 2 pumpkins were placed atop a building on campus. Manchester, New Hampshire station WMUR filed this report.
A storied Halloween tradition has returned to Plymouth State University. 2 pumpkins have mysteriously appeared on the spires of Rounds Tower. This tradition first began in the mid-1970s. How they got up there is, well, that's a guarded secret. Coming up with the best far-fetched tales has become a campus pastime. Any theories, gentlemen?
Oh, yeah. There's only one answer. Aliens.
Oh.
I can believe that it started in the 70s. Students were really high back then. So they'd be in their 60s and probably still high, but I doubt if they could pull this off. Who could be responsible? Was it aliens or witches, maybe? We all know how important a comfortable bed to sleep in is for our physical and mental health. What if your bed is a coffin? An online influencer, of course, who calls herself Sad Spice, says she's wanted to sleep in a coffin since she was 14 to hide away from all of her problems. She also said it's a great way of weeding out potentially bad dates. Bad dates? I'd say all dates, unless there is a casket built for 2. There's always that one neighbor that goes too far. And in Bucktown, Louisiana, it's Vic Moriana. Here's a report from WGNO in New Orleans.
We do want to warn you, some might find these images offensive.
This is our church here.
Vic Moriana has been building this Halloween display by hand for a year.
These are our parishioners here.
Moriana says their Bucktown home turns heads every year, but this time,
So we have a little religious theme here.
it's also sparked controversy.
We wanted to make people scared, to make them a little uncomfortable. We have no interest of inciting violence, and we have no bias against the church. We're both raised Catholic.
But some Bucktown neighbors were shocked. The neighbor next door said he doesn't see any issue with the decorations.
Every year he goes way overboard on trying to make these displays. Everybody seems to like it, except a few people.
Moriana says they don't reflect the family's personal or religious beliefs. It's just for fun. But some neighbors say the theme went too far.
I'm all about Halloween. I decorate. We all have scary stuff. This just is crossing the line.
If this isn't your particular cup of tea, you know, maybe pick a different street to walk down on Halloween.
In Bucktown, Lily Cummings, Eyewitness News.
As Vic said in another interview, blasphemy ain't illegal. And that's this week's News Briefs. All right, now it's time to bring in Russell. Russell, come on in.
Hey, Amber, happy Halloween.
Yes, we're doing it again. We're doing it again. All right,
Yes.
Russell, we have a jam-packed show tonight, so tell people the best way to watch the show, with their lights out, of course.
Yeah, so turn the lights down and put on the popcorn and have a spooky evening as you watch the show in our favorite place, which is YouTube, and youtube.com/Amber Live, because on YouTube you get to see the show in full HD, and all your friends are there in the chat room, so you can send spooky messages to each other and have a good scare and a good chat. And you can talk with Amber and I, and we'll have a grand old time in the chat room. And then remember, if you can't watch the show, or if you want to hear it again as you're driving to work on Monday, you can go to the Amber Live interviews and listen to podcasts of all the incredible guests that we have on the show, because there's just a ton of them out there. So enjoy Amber everywhere.
Everywhere. And now it's trick or treat. So what would be a good treat for Amber Live?
A wonderful treat for Amber Live would be to become a bustier. We love our bustiers, and we need more bustiers to help us keep going here. So use that Venmo at RJD Pro, or go to the website amberlive.tv and use your credit card on the donate button if you'd like to do that instead. Every bit helps. We have super bustiers, we have regular bustiers, and unfortunately we have bills every month. So it would be a great help if you could give us $5, $10. How much money did you spend on candy for kids this year? How about giving Amber some candy?
Kit Kat.
And all that money goes towards keeping us on the air so we can bring you great guests. Like tonight, we have 4 incredible people on the show. Actually, 5 if we count Big J.
We do count Big J.
And we do. And first up is going to be Rocky Digati, who is just fascinating. Rocky makes her own human bone jewelry, and she lives with a gay ghost. And we've also got Thea Lewis back from Burlington to scare you with a good ghost story. It takes place in a restaurant. You may or may not want to eat there more often once you hear the stories. And then we've got Charles Rosenay, who has collected stories from all over Connecticut of true ghost stories. And he has a new book out that you can get and read. And he also runs something called Paranormal Con in Salem, and I think in Connecticut as well, and has the amazing Kreskin as part of his lineup. And then finally, our good old friend Duane Scot Cerny has a spooky poem called A Village Ghost that he's going to share with us. And then there's Rocco and Big J and Boog and Shug. It is packed tonight.
So let's get started.
Yes, here's Rocky.
Rocky Digati is a paranormal investigator, author, and educator. She has written several books on the history and mystery of haunted places and loves sharing her stories, such as interviewing the famous vampire of Rhode Island, Mercy Brown, and a whole lot more. And she has a very special friend we'll hear more about, too. Rocky, come on in.
Well, hey, Miss Amber.
Hello there, Rocky. All right, first, how did you start getting involved in the paranormal?
Well, I grew up in a very old world atmosphere, and I hate to correct you on the thing. I've only written one book on history and mystery, but I have, and Mercy Brown died in I think it was 1896. But
okay, so you didn't interview her. Okay.
I did not interview her. Well, there's always the ghost box, so we could always try it sometime. But I grew up in New England. I'm originally from Rhode Island, from a little town called Bristol, Rhode Island. And it's a peninsula in the middle of Narragansett Bay, settled in 1680. So history was all around me. It actually came in through the history of the area that I lived in. And I was a very curious person. And as a kid, and I was lucky, my dad was a teacher. So my dad was an art teacher, and he was always interested in history and things. Unfortunately, like a lot of folks, I was very much bullied as a kid. And the one place the bullies would not go was in the cemetery. So I would dodge into these little old New England slate with the skulls on the gravestone cemeteries. And those were my refuge. And I would start reading the stones. I would ask questions because I'd see a name on the stone that maybe had the same name as my school or something. And I started learning about the town's history. And my dad took me down the town hall, and I got to read those moldy books that smell like sweat socks. And, it was great to get kind of like hands-on history. I'm very lucky to have had a very involved mentor in that area. So it started in the graveyards as my refuge, and to this day, I find them a place of peace and solace, and something that should be preserved. So I think that was part of it. I had a lot of old world influence. The area I'm from has a lot of immigrants from Italy and Portugal. And I'm a blended immigrant family from Italy and Portugal. And, so and my grandmother from the Portuguese side, she was a curandera. So that means like she was, well, we called her a witch doctor, but I don't think she was too crazy about that. And, so we had herbal cures. We had a lot of that mysterious old world stuff was going on in our house. So we had a little taste of it, and my curiosity never waned.
And what did you do with it? You went to school? Did you go to college?
I did go to college, but I didn't go to college for anything nearly that interesting. I currently work in the IT field by day because I enjoy indoor plumbing and keeping the lights on. But my passions, I studied technical writing, and I worked as a 911 EMT for many, many years. And I now, like I said, I work in IT. I ride a desk. But, it's always been there. The creative force has always been there. The interest and the curiosity in science and the paranormal has always been there.
What does a paranormal investigator do?
They sit around a lot, and I'll tell you why. Paranormal investigations, talking about some of the TV shows that are very, very popular now. We have some that are paranormal caught on camera. We have the Ghost Hunters is the one that most people, I think, are familiar with, Jason Hawes. Funny thing, 1,000,000 years ago, back in the Paleolithic age, I joined a paranormal group in Rhode Island. And at one point when I was getting ready to leave the state, the leader of the group said, they're thinking of doing a TV show. We're talking to somebody about that. And I said, oh, that's really cool. I wish you guys some great luck with that. And as I'm driving home, I'm like, that's never going to happen. So I actually told Jay that the last time I saw him. I've known Jay Hawes and Steve Gonsalves for 20 plus years, and Carl Johnson and the Demon Twins, as I call them, Carl and Keith Johnson. I made some wonderful friends, and I learned about paranormal investigating. So if you watch the shows, most of it is hurry up and wait. You just sit around. But paranormal investigators are observers and recorders. The idea is you're looking for proof. You're looking to capture something. And stories are great when they always tend to come from like a friend of a friend, or, I call that the FOF, friend of a friend, and it's all, but when you have the experience and when you can record and, and corroborate that experience, that's when it really becomes a true investigation. And then you end up spending hours listening for any little thing on recordings, and it can be very tedious. It's far more tedious than the TV would have you admit.
All right. Now tell me about Henry.
Henry, I guess I would say he's my roommate. Technically, I'm his guest, I feel. I live in a very old house in a little town in South New Jersey that is from 1851. And the previous occupant was a gentleman named Henry. And Henry lived here with his partner. And at one point in time, also operated a bed and breakfast next door in one of the larger Victorian homes. It's a downtown area. It's got a lot of little shops and things. And when I first moved here in September of 2017, the first few nights alone in the house, I sensed something. The minute I saw the house, I fell in love with it. In fact, I wasn't even sure I could afford it. Turns out I could, and I was all excited. So I'm moving in, and I'm hearing footsteps in the other room, kind of. And I got a bit of a spidey sense. I wouldn't say I'm certainly not a medium. I think we can all agree I'm more like an extra large. But I was hearing all these footsteps. And this is one of those old houses. You can't sneak up on anybody in this house because all the floors creak. If you were to put a handful of pinballs in my living room, they'd go to the four corners of the earth. So, I started hearing that. And then I was saying, well, okay, I don't feel anything that makes me feel bad. I just feel like I'm not alone. And I'm sort of like trying to tune in a little bit, and I'm talking, hey, hi, I love this house, and I started nesting as you do, and I'm making things for the house, and I'm many things, but a seamstress is not one of them. But I'm trying to I got some cheap fabric at Joann's, and I'm like trying to like monkey around with my sewing machine and all. And it was funny. I really felt like there was somebody over my shoulder laughing because I'm just sitting there, I'm having my Fred Flintstone swearing because the bobbin. I think we can all agree the bobbin is from hell. So I'm trying to get all this done, and I'm really feeling this. As time went on, and I got to know my neighbors, I had said something about sewing to the lady next door, and she goes, "Oh, Henry used to come and help me sew all the time." I said, "Really?" I said, "Tell me more about that." She, "Oh yes, yeah, he did. He used to make. He was a puppeteer and an artist, and he made marionettes. And of course, in addition to making the he would sew all the clothes. So whenever she had a project and got stuck, he would go over and help. By all accounts, from both neighbors on both sides, as well as other people in the community, I would have very much relished having Henry as a friend in the corporal world, in the real life. He sounds like a delight. And the only reason I knew that he was gay is because folks had talked about his partner and whatnot. And I don't think had a partner at the time that he died, but he did at one time because he lived here for quite some time. He lived here almost 30 years. So this was his home, and he loved this house. So I started learning a little bit more about him, and you found the picture that folks saw is because I found him on Facebook. I found his old account, and there were pictures on Facebook of areas in this house that were beautifully and very detailed, decorated for Christmas. Looked like he was a big fan of Christmas. And that's the built-in the corner of the dining room. And I believe he made the nutcrackers that you see up top. And I still have that Tiffany lamp too. And it's just, his taste was impeccable. And I think his artistry was absolutely. And yeah, it's Christmas kitschy. Sorry, Hen. You know how I feel about that. So, I think the one thing that probably breaks his heart is I don't really decorate for Christmas. But I got you on Halloween, man. I got that going on. But, it was interesting learning a little bit about him. And when I was kind of really, really glad to hear how many people enjoyed him. Because he sounds, at all accounts, like I said, a terrific human, someone I would have loved to have known. And we have a very inclusive church that's across the street, an Episcopal church. And the pastor and her wife were telling me that they were good friends with him. And when I told them, I got comfortable enough to tell them, I think something's going on in my house. And they're like, "Oh, that's totally him." That's him. Oh, absolutely.
Have you had contact other than feeling him there?
I have not had an exchange as in, the call and response or anything like that, but I have had contact. One of the most dramatic contacts. Now, it's very rare that people feel being touched. I mean, maybe a brush by or something like that, but actual physical contact. I was first. I should probably preface this. I'm a klutz. I'm a terrible klutz. I trip over lint in the carpet. It's terrible. So I'm a very awkward land mammal, and I was at the top of the stairs, as one does, pretty much betting the odds, carrying a load of laundry and wearing flip flops. I think we all smell that one coming. And I did trip at the top of the stairs, and it was funny, and it happened so quickly. I was suddenly sitting on the top step, like somebody had yanked me back hard. And my laundry basket went, over tea kettle down a full flight of stairs, which would have been me. Had I not been somehow, and believe you me, we can't say that my balance did that. Not this kid. So, I do feel that it actually felt like somebody just grabbed me and went, "Whoa, don't fall." And there have been there have been gifts and kindnesses that have been marked.
Such as?
Well, the hutch that you saw in the dining room was 100% empty when I took over the house. And I have things just so in there. Of course, my version of it is a little bit more grim. And it looks sort of like a death nerd and an alcoholic started using that because that's where I keep the booze, where I keep the glasses and the skull stuff. So I was walking by, and I'm one of those that it's a little bit avant-garde, but I know where everything is. And I was walking by and I saw something kind of askew, and I look in there and there was a shot glass on its side. Not really a shot glass collector. I'd never seen this glass before. And it was one of those glasses you'd get at a souvenir shop, and it said Henry's Bar, South Beach. And I was like, no way. And I even showed like other people. I said, like, you were in here. You helped me putting away dishes on Thanksgiving. This came literally out of nowhere. So now it's a tradition when folks gather that we pour a little something, something in the shot glass, and we always toast and include Henry.
Wow. Any other signs?
Sure. Kindnesses. Unfortunately, I lost him. I had a beautiful dog. I had a dog named Dino, and he was a 150-pound Rottweiler. He was a rescue. And he was the sweetest big doofy bunny that ever lived. And I miss that dog to this day. Dino was one for, he had like his chair that he liked. But sometimes I would catch him laying down with his feet, and the leg would be moving like somebody was scratching at him and rubbing his tongue. He would go up into belly up, and he'd be like, oh yeah, like somebody was rubbing him. And I'd notice that he would notice things. But the most hilarious of the kindnesses has to be sweeping up. I was vacuuming, and it's happened on more than one occasion. And I'm going around, I got my route. I've been accused of recreational vacuuming. So, but I got my route, and I came around my route. I went around the coffee table, and literally in the space it would take to walk around a large coffee table. As I came around, all of a sudden in the middle of my path where I had just vacuumed was a giant pile of dog hair, like it had been swept in from the corners. And I was like, the vents aren't on, the heat's not on. No idea how that. And I did kind of think that was quirky. And I kind of said, well, and I thanked Henry. It's like, if you did that, that was really a big help, because that's nasty allergens. Let's get that up. It's happened more than one time. That's a regular thing now. At least, once or twice every couple of months, I'll end up with a pile of dirt right where I just vacuumed, as if to say you missed some.
What would you like to happen with Henry, you and Henry?
I would love for Henry to be welcomed. I feel funny saying it that way, because this is his house. I would love to continue to be welcomed by Henry in this beautiful, beautiful home, which I've grown to truly love and make my own in my way. And I feel that part of making it my own is embracing Henry and his beautiful history. And he, I can tell that it's a wonderful thing. I can tell we would have had a good time had we known each other. And I say, well, we can have as good of a time as we can now. I would love
Has any of your visitors or friends acknowledged Henry in any way?
He has made himself a presence to several friends. A lot of like when the girls come over, he loves that. Comes right in, and he's dishing with the rest. I think the night we had a dirty toy party, he was in heaven. It must have been the best time for him. I've accidentally gotten some of his blue mail that came from a catalog place that had certain types of movies. So what I did was I opened it, and then I put them all out on the dining room, and then I left him. I did my errands, and I left him home with his mail. Just so you know what. Why not? But I think the most dramatic thing is I do have a friend whose significant other is not a believer. He's a very practical guy. He is a veteran. He's very matter of fact. This is, he thinks it's all interesting, but he doesn't believe. And one day he came down from going upstairs and using the bathroom, and he came down and he was shook. This is somebody who's seen battle, and he's shook. And we're like, what's the matter? And he said, someone touched me on the shoulder. Like I felt the hand squeeze my shoulder. I'm never going upstairs in your house again. And he hasn't since. And that was like 2 years ago. And he felt it. He says, it was a real person. It felt like a real person that just kind of grabbed me. And he says, it wasn't hostile. because Henry's not a hostile guy, but he might have said, hey guy, just hey man. And
I'm surprised it was his shoulder.
He did say he was using the facilities at the time. That may have been part of. Like, look, okay, not when they're in the toilet, hun. Just don't. But it is funny because ever since then, he won't even really come in past the kitchen. And I feel bad because I don't think it would be. I feel like I know Henry now because I live my life with the present. And hauntings are not 24/7, 365 constant activity. If they were, everyone who had a haunting would be out of their minds because they'd need a break. It comes and goes. It ebbs and flows. I'm sure there are other people that get visits and whatnot. But I think that I've never experienced anything hostile or threatening. Exactly the opposite, really. So I guess, try not to scare them too much.
Rocky, how do you celebrate or acknowledge Halloween? What's your perfect Halloween?
Well, I don't stop celebrating for one. Somebody's like, yay, it's Halloween season. I can put up the spooky stuff. I'm like, dude, was I supposed to take it down? It's like at a house full of, I literally have skeletons in my closet, Miss Amber. I do. We talked about, I make human bone jewelry. So I have lots of unusual supplies. Oh. That is phalanges. That is actually, I'm wearing that piece around my neck. That is a cervical vertebrae, likely about a C3. And that's a piece of Colorado red jade. That's turquoise. That's another cervical vertebra. Again, roughly C3-ish. That is a bone from the wrist. That's a carpal bone set in resin. And that's an interesting piece. That's an atlas vertebrae. You have your first two cervical vertebrae are your atlas and your axis, and they actually fit together. That's the larger of the two, and the first one, that's what holds up your skull.
Where do you get your bones?
That was the last lady got a little too nosy. Just kidding. I work in the medical field, and anybody can get bones. You can get them. I can get them. We all can get them, except for in 3 states, they are legal to buy, sell, and trade. In Georgia and Tennessee, they can't leave or enter the states, in-state trading only. And in Louisiana, it's no way, no how. It's not legal to own, buy, sell, possess, have, use, no.
That's interesting.
Well, I think they got a bit of a voodoo problem down there. It's all I'm saying.
That could be.
That could be part of it.
Oh, Rocky, thank you so much for joining us and allowing us to be a part of your Halloween season. And I hope to talk again sometime. And Henry, if you're listening, come visit me sometime.
Oh, you'll know him by the smell of the breakfast. There's a little 6-inch door jamb in between the dining and living and the dining room and the kitchen. And sometimes just in that 6 inches as you pass through, you will smell a breakfast that'll make you cry.
Oh,
and I know that must have been where, yeah. Oh, I know. I mean, I'm telling you, I've gone to IHOP more times because of him.
Happy Halloween, Rocky.
And happy Halloween to you and all of your listeners. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, Rocky. And now it's poetry time with Duane Scot Cerny.
A village ghost. I ascend the stairs, my footprints missing. I spook the cat, amused by her hissing. Dogs drop their tails or abruptly stop pissing. Birds flutter fast and away as if missing. As for pesky handrail dust, I leave but a trace. A finger, a hand, a curious squiggle out of place. I float up flights, stairs alight beneath my grace. Not yet do I reveal the haste of my pace. Who might I be of decades gone, of famous West villagers plotted to lawn, or obscure folk simply tagging along? So long cast the shadows, so long. What of Aaron Burr, his daughter and Poe, most ghostly known as Fiend, Fine, Filly, and Foe? The famous went as most villagers go, both fast and slow. Appear, then vanish, like a warm summer snow. Stand beneath Stanford White's arch, grand. Imagine the pistol in his killer's jealous hand. Imagine the shots as they silence the room, the band. What tune do they offer as his afterlife span? 20,000 bodies lie under Washington Park. 100,000 more if we all glowed in the dark. Unknown but not unloved, death still cannot spark the million memories buried, nary a single grave mark. The dead aren't the lore of a distant yesteryear, their endings on a perpetual spectral plane or sphere. Death is a circular checkout line, and you're your own cashier. Let the funeral host make his final toast, to cherish or to cheer. A fellow spirit told me once, it's not bad being dead, whether run down by cobblestone horses or a vehicle instead, or drowning in the Hudson or splayed out in your bed. It's not the dying that will kill you, it's the things you left unsaid. If I had a breath to catch, I'd be nearly 5-6 floors up. How the living do this daily is beyond me, Buttercup. Be sure to give your friends a friendly ghost heads up. For children, this was child's play, but now you're all grown up. For you, the decades passed like a fast-moving train, yes. You stole kisses in the dark, made love in the rain, what a mess. Youth fell away, never a single age to stop. Retain what's best. You move through time itself, you see. Opposites do not pertain. Make sense? I reached the penthouse door, gliding through the wood. I'd come down the chimney, though that's often misunderstood. I am visiting a place I best explain. I should. It's where I lived and died, you see. It's where I stand and stood. Before me came tenets of prose and dance and art. Before you came the brilliant, the tattered, the not so smart. I am probably the latter of the three, a heart no longer beating, but still snagging my bit part. In the history of my haunting, this structure old and strong, I daily make this journey. Up the stairs I move along. I catch you when you're humming the lost, forgotten song. I watch you through your mirror and wonder, where must I belong? Under rooftop rafters is a simple servant's room. Might have been a worker here, I trust, I forget, I assume. Fogged out skylights diminish the dark like a sky-high tomb. A 6th floor walk-up for a brideless bride, a groomless groom. Hot coffee whispers to the stale bread, you're soon to be some toast. Vintage B-list bars pack C-list stars, all schmoozing up the host. You will not find me in the camera's flash of flesh or on some IG post. No, I'm living out the best of death. Yours forever, a village ghost.
Thanks, Duane. Hey, Russell, come in.
Oh, spooky. We have a lot of ghosts on the show tonight.
We got more coming up.
We do. We have Thea Lewis coming up to tell us a spooky ghost tale from, I believe, Shanty by the Shore. And then Charles Rosenay to talk about his new book, his Halloween adventures, and his paranormal cons. And we have a special Halloween message from our friend Big J. You know how we love Big J.
Oh, and yes.
He does love to be thrilling, as you know. But what keeps all that going? Our friends, the Bustiers. I do want to give a shout out again to them. Say thank you. And please, if you aren't a Bustier, or if you can help us out by giving a little more and upping your donation for the year, that would be great. Use that Venmo at RJD Pro. Or if you want, and the holidays are coming up, don't forget the Amber Live store. We have great new products. They are out there, and we have so many of them. There are about 50 products total on the store right now. We've got these great In Drag We Trust products and the Rainbow Solidarity logo, all kinds of things. Go check them out in the store, and that's all at amberlive.tv. It's easy to find. And now it's time for Thea Lewis and a ghost story.
It wouldn't be an Amber Live Halloween show without the visit from Thea Lewis. Thea is one of our favorite ghost storytellers and authors. Thea, come on in.
Hey there. Happy Halloween.
Oh, yes. Welcome back. Now, since we've last talked to you, you have a new book out. Tell us about it.
I do. It's called True Crime Stories of Burlington, Vermont, and it was a lot of fun to research and write. It's on bookshelves now in all your favorite independents and also at Barnes & Noble and on Amazon.com.
That many crimes here in Burlington?
So many crimes. And the shocking thing to most people when I sit in groups of readers who come to hear me tell stories about the book and then have me sign the book, the interesting thing to them is that I actually knew a couple of the murderers personally.
That is very, very scary. And what number of book is this of yours?
This is my 7th book in all and my 6th book with Arcadia and the History Press.
And most of them are ghost stories, and this one's crime related. Wow. What got you started in writing books or the fascination with the ghosts?
Well, the fascination with ghosts kind of goes back to my quirky family. And, I went to Salem, Massachusetts back in 2001, and it is the land of all things spooky. And when I came back from that vacation, it got me wondering, why didn't Burlington have a haunted tour? And so I did research for a year and started Queen City Ghost Walk. We like to joke that it doesn't keep me off the streets, but it keeps me out of mischief.
I've been on several of your tours, and they are great. All right. So what's the story tonight?
Tonight, I want to tell you a story about a waterfront ghost named Isaac Nye. But he had a very interesting nickname. His nickname was the Hermit of Champlain. And here's why. Isaac Nye was a merchant in the city of Burlington. He started off his career in business in the center of town, a little bit off the beaten path of the busy Water Street or Battery Street, as we know it today. But then he got this business, kind of a mercantile, you might call it a general store, there on the waterfront in the place that we now know as the Shanty on the Shore. And back in those days, you walk behind the Shanty on the Shore today, and there are railroad tracks and there's the dock. In those days, the dock was right there where Isaac Nye lived, and the water came up very close. So Isaac Nye was called the Hermit of Champlain because of something terrible that happened to him a little later in his life. But earlier on, people marveled at him because he was so strange. He really didn't have the habits of other men of his generation. He didn't smoke cigars or pipes. He didn't chase the loose women that were proliferate down there on the waterfront. And he didn't drink whiskey. But what Isaac Nye really loved to do, in fact, his only hobby, was follow funerals. And it didn't matter at all whether he knew the deceased. As a matter of fact, many times he didn't. He would call for this young boy, James, who was an orphan he'd taken in, and James would hitch the horse to Isaac Nye's buggy, and Isaac Nye would go to the funeral and watch as everyone paid their last respects there at the cemetery. And then, for some reason, he would stay until the last shovelful of dirt was thrown on the grave, and he'd turn around and go back home. I did this for quite some time and working in his shop out in front of the building. And Isaac Nye was notified by a man named Timothy Follett, who is another ghost on my tour. Timothy Follett was the president of the Rutland and Burlington Railroad Company, and he wanted Isaac Nye's water rights to fill the land for the railroad. And Isaac Nye said no. Timothy Follett, very well connected, friends with, rubbing elbows with guys on the Supreme Court, he took Isaac Nye's land by eminent domain. And after that, Isaac Nye said that business was distasteful to him. He wrote this in a letter to his brother who lived at the time in Essex, New York. You know what Isaac Nye did? He got up the next day after he mailed that letter and did not open his store. So people coming in from ships in Burlington's harbor and people from the middle of town would jiggle the handle of the door of the store furiously, but could not get in. Well, this went on for about 15 years until Isaac Nye passed away. And when he did, it was noted in his last will and testament that he hoped to be able to be laid to be viewed on the counter where he'd done business before he'd locked up his store, so people might come to pay their last respects. and they granted his wish. However, they didn't clean anything up. So 15 years of bats and rats, dead and alive, spiders and cobwebs were all over this store as the fine people of the city of Burlington filed through to pay their last respects. Now, because of Isaac Nye and all his quirky behavior and his tendency to want to be left alone, this hermit of Champlain, we have lots of crazy things that happen in the Shanty on the Shore building. It's been noted in papers like 7 Days that up in the lounge, if you talk about Isaac Nye too much, or if he just feels generally like making himself known, all of the bottles behind the bar will shake furiously, and sometimes a little wind might whip through the lounge upstairs. A young woman came on one of my Darkness Falls tours, and she told me she used to work at the Shanty on the Shore, and one of the chores that she had to do at the end of her shift was to go into the dining room and put up all the chairs on top of all the tables so that the person who came in the next morning very early to clean could clean the floors. She said one night she went around the dining room, placing all the chairs upside down on top of the tables, as one would, and then she was leaving the room and went to turn off the light. And she happened to, for some reason, just look back and make one final glance, and she saw that one chair from every single table was sitting on the floor. Well, this young woman was very startled, to say the least. But my favorite story about someone's encounter with Isaac Nye was the story of a young couple who was at another restaurant right across the way, the old Ice House restaurant. And it was quite late at night. They'd been attending a private birthday party. And when they came out, the Shanty on the Shore was closed. Well, the woman, as she was getting into the car, looked across the street and saw an elderly man, it seemed, very fragile, wearing old-fashioned clothes, gazing out at the lake, just standing near the railroad tracks, just observing. He was kind of quavering back and forth, and she said to her husband, "Honey, we've got to go help that man. He's all alone here. We can't leave him on the waterfront," as they were the last ones there in the parking lot, apparently, except for the staff inside. Well, her husband said what my husband might have said. "Don't go near him. He's none of our business." But what happened was she talked him into it, and they approached. The young man walked up behind the gentleman as the gentleman was swaying there and looking a little uncertain. He put his hand out and he said, "Excuse me, sir, my wife and I were just wondering." And then the man looked at him and began to slowly disappear. He was there looking like a human, looking like you, looking like me, and then he faded until he was simply invisible. Those two people got into their car so fast it would make your head spin. I love the Shanty on the Shore. It is one of my favorite haunts in the city of Burlington.
Now, how did you find out about him following the funerals?
Well, he was actually the subject of an article in the New York Times when he passed away. And it was noted in a couple of other articles in old newspapers that Isaac Nye had one habit that seemed to be, his the thing that he did that gave him joy, which was to, or at least gave him solace, or maybe he was looking ahead at the end of his life. I'm not quite sure, but he loved to follow funerals. There's another interesting story about Isaac Nye. When they tried to take his water rights, they offered him $1,500, which was a princely sum back in the mid 1800s. And Isaac Nye had what was called at the time a raft of spars, and I had to look that up. A raft of spars would be a bunch of masts kind of hitched together. And he said he didn't want to give away his water rights. He preferred to have his raft of spars right out there behind his establishment because he took such joy at seeing the young neighborhood children, mostly Irish, use it as a place where they would jump off into the lake.
Fascinating story. You're a great historian. You're a better storyteller and a terrific author as well. Thea, it wouldn't be Halloween without you. Thank you so much.
Take care.
It wouldn't be Halloween without a visit from Thea. And now another return visitor, Charles Rosenay, who's going to tell us about the ghosts in Connecticut. You may remember 2 years ago, we had Charles Rosenay on to talk about his fascination with all things related to the Fab Four, the Beatles. He has written books, led tours of Liverpool, and hosts Beatlemania conventions. But there's a spookier side of Charles that we feel will fit in with tonight's show. Charles, come on in.
Ooh, here I am.
Yeah, you're back. Yes. Well, thank you, Charles, so much for returning to Amber Live.
On completely different topics. No rock and roll, no Beatles. We're in the Halloween season.
Yes, we are. So tell me about what Halloween means to you.
It's funny because I was brought up pretty religious, but we always went trick-or-treating. My parents always took me, and I think they loved it as much as I did. And growing up, I just remember I didn't want to grow up to the point where I couldn't go trick-or-treating. As a teen, I was going, and then I would try to find, parents who had kids who I could accompany so I could keep trick-or-treating. And I guess that manifested itself into me eventually running, major haunted attractions, haunted houses, where instead of, getting the treats, I was, dishing out the tricks and scaring people.
So what are you doing this Halloween season?
Where do I start? Well, I have a new book out. So just about every night that I'm not doing fun podcasts and interviews, I'm out in libraries doing a program on True Ghost Stories of Connecticut, which is my book. And I'm out there talking to the people about my history, how I grew up loving monsters and beginning to join the world of the paranormal. I'm a paranormal investigator now. I go out on events and investigations, and I produce paranormal conventions. But what am I doing? I am prepping for every weekend in October something called the Haunted Trolley, which we inaugurated last year on an actual trolley line, an antique trolley where we go on board. Last year, it was more of a seance, a supernatural theatrical. Oh, look at that conductor there. He looks ominous. He looks like he hasn't slept in years. And what we're doing this year is we're doing a murder mystery on board the trolley. So people go into the box office, they have an orientation, someone gets killed, they learn how he got killed, maybe get a few clues, and then they jump on the trolley, and it's a half-hour trolley ride forward and back where the clues are given, and then they have to figure out who the killer is, and there's actors who act it out. It's going to be really, really special. So I'm excited about being creative. The creative juices are flowing, and it ain't the same old stuff.
Right. So tell me more about that book, your new book. How many stories do you have in there?
It's about 30 stories, 30 chapters. The criteria for the book was because even though I was born in the Bronx, I lived in Connecticut most of my life. So the stories had to do with Connecticut. They either had to be based around Connecticut or have taken place in Connecticut. And they had to be true. That was really important because I didn't want someone embellishing a ghost story. I didn't want them fumfering it up, adding material, flourishing it, making it more scary. I wanted the true story of what happened because the truth is more astonishing than anything that someone could make up. And we have just stories that are mind-blowing. The firsthand paranormal accounts by individuals who experienced the occurrences is very different than any other books that have been out there, because most ghost books, whether it's Haunted Kentucky or Ghost Stories of Arizona, will tell you the place. They'll usually give you the history and maybe, why it's haunted. I wanted to know what happened when someone went to a given place. What was their wow experience? And of the 30 or so chapters in the book, many of them are written by paranormal people who've seen it all, done it all, experienced it all, but I wanted that one unbelievable moment. And I did 3 stories myself. And it's funny because one of them happened in college. I'm not going to give it away. But when it happened, I wrote it off as, okay, I can't explain the pink lady of New Haven. I can't explain why she comes on her porch at the certain time and she's dressed in pink and she has no face and black, and it's just very, very crazy to the point there I'd forgotten about it. I don't know if I repressed the memory, but I did go there with a friend. He taught me about it. He gave me the history, and I brought my parents the next day, and the same thing happened. I went a third day with friends, and I didn't believe it. I had to look around to see if someone was projecting And in those days, no one did anything like that. But yeah, the same paranormal experience 3 nights in a row. And I'd forgotten about it till it was time to write the book. And then all of a sudden, wait a second, I had this unbelievable occurrence, this supernatural, paranormal ghost encounter. And I was able to build the book around what I remembered. And I actually called the friend who took me on it. He lived in California. We hadn't spoken in probably 3 decades. And I read him my story and he says, wow, that's exactly how he remembered it happening. So very excited about the book. It's available obviously on Amazon. And when I do conventions and when I do libraries, it's such a cool pleasure to sign. Like I used to go to all these events and I would have people sign for me. Now I'm on the other side signing for them. It's such a great feeling.
Tell me about the big event coming up in November.
So aside from the Haunted Trolley, which is every weekend in October and takes place in Connecticut, I've got, which I think witches and non-witches alike are going to love, in Salem, Massachusetts. I've got the Salem Paranormal and Horror Convention taking place at Salem State University on the weekend of November 11th and 12th. I think it might be Veterans Day weekend, Saturday and Sunday, with amazing guests, with vendors, with special attractions, with speakers. If you want to know anything about the paranormal, if you want to see some really cool horror guests, if you want to have your fortune told, you want to go to a tarot reader, all of the above at one place. Tickets are cheap, $19, and admission includes every aspect of the event. So it's very exciting. It's the second year we're doing it. We did it last year. People loved it. It was, beyond me that there wasn't this type of convention on this level. I consider it, when I do shows, world class, really big, big events. And I was surprised that Salem had always had smaller, really intimate family type of these paranormal conventions that were just tiny. And this was the next step. And I'd been doing it in Connecticut for a while and thought, well, what's the next best place to do it? Well, probably Amityville, but I haven't done that yet. So we brought it to Salem, and it's been a fun ride. And it's next month, November 11th and 12th.
Your headliner.
The headliner from the horror side is a gal named Tara Buckman, who was in the movies Silent Night, Deadly Night. She was in Extra. She was in the TV shows Buck Rogers and Freddie Nightmare. She's probably best known as one of the 2 gals, along with Adrienne Barbeau, in the movie The Cannonball Run. If you look at the credits in there, you'll see Tara Buckman. She's my horror guest. But my para guest, when we think of magic, we think of Houdini, right? When we think of the paranormal nowadays with all the Conjuring movies, and we might think of the Warrens. When we think of mentalism, mind reading, we think of the amazing Kreskin. Oh no, there he is. He's trying to read my mind, but it's a blank. And he's cracking up. He probably knows we're talking about him now. He's probably predicted the interview. But not only did he write the foreword to my book, True Ghost Stories of Connecticut, he tells the most amazing incident that happened to him that was one of those unexplained occurrences that just when you read it, it's like, oh my God, it's amazing. He's alive. And he's alive, and he's funny, and he signs autographs for folks, and he takes pictures with them, and he's got books to sell, and he's our other main guest at the Paracon. And if you look on the website, salemparacon.org, it's a laundry list of really great guests who you would know if you're into the paranormal, and you know these type of people who've been on different haunted shows and have been at different conventions, and they're all going to talk on stage. They're all going to meet people. They're all going to share their experiences. And it's probably the largest guest list I've ever had at one of these conventions. So along with Tara Buckman, along with Amazing Kreskin, there's all these other cool guests. And I'm not going to mention one because I'll leave off another, and I don't want anyone to be offended. But if you go to the website, you'll see all the different people. Yeah, the website is www.salemparacon.org.
Now, how did you hook up with the Amazing Kreskin?
You know, that's funny because I've always been a fan. I mean, I remember him from Johnny Carson. I remember
in the 70s, 50 years ago.
Merv Griffin, Mike Douglas. He was the go-to. If people wanted to have their mind read but also have a laugh, Kreskin was great. And, you know, there was a game that came out, ESP, Milton Bradley board game. So in his time, he was, he was a in-demand guest. And he would play around the world. He'd probably do 300 gigs a year. And his shtick, you're going to love this, is what he got paid for the night was by check. It was put in an envelope, and it was hidden in the room where he was going to perform. And at the end of the night, he would go and he would find that check. And if he didn't find the check, he wouldn't get paid. Would you believe that he always got paid and always found the check? No matter if the people hid it in the rafters and basements, if someone had it on them, no matter what, Kreskin to this day finds that check. How did I get him? So I had booked him for a few events overseas. And he came and he had to do an hour show. He wound up doing 2 hours. The first hour, he talked about all his television appearances and all his great memories and with presidents and with Johnny Carson and all that. And then in a subtle way, he works into his, I don't want to call them tricks, but, you know, for Halloween, you know, trick or treat, his shtick, his routine. And it's just pow, 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 and one after another. And someone in the crowd whose name is Mark and has just graduated. Well, how do you know this? And he's just zipping off. And when he gets on the run and he's in his zone, it's like the mouth drops, and he's like 20 years old again, running through the crowd and reading people's minds. It's amazing, and that's why he's the amazing Kreskin.
Well, what's the most amazing thing you've witnessed from him?
The most amazing thing I've witnessed from him has been scenarios where people have come up and they just sat next to him and he told them things that recently happened. And this is not once. I've seen it numerous times. But people usually ask me, what's my most paranormal experience? What's my most paranormal encounter? And I'm not someone who can walk into a haunted house and see something, or hear something, or feel something. I don't even feel temperature drops. It's a special gift that people have, you know, the sixth sense, the third eye, whatever it is, who are clairvoyant, who are mediums. I'm not that, but I do have a different talent, and that's I'm able to capture amazing stuff on camera, on cell phones, on film. And, you know, I've been to places where the psychic I'm with, I'm one half of a team called the shaman and the showman. I'm the showman, and let the other person, you know what they're doing. And they'll go, take pictures. There's an empty door there. Just keep taking pictures. And sure enough, we were in an old opera house. And in this opera house, it had been abandoned. No one had been in there years. And there was an upper level. It was a balcony, and it was condemned, so we couldn't go up there. And there was a door in the background, and the light was shining through because we were there during the day before it got dark at night. And I took about 50, 60 photos. I don't know how many. And all the photos were blank except for this one photo. If you can see, there's one shrouded figure in black, a shadow figure. I know, right? And in one photo of all those, this appeared. That's why I had to put it on the cover of my book. But that's the type of things that you just don't expect. And when I go on paranormal investigations or people come to the conventions, I always say, I'm not an expert. I started out as the skeptic. I was the non-believer who this was proven to. It's time and time again. I can't deny it because I'm at so many occurrences and so many events where more and more of these things happen. So what do I say? I say, take tons of pictures. If you're clairvoyant, if you have a sixth sense, if you're a medium, you're going to sense those things. But if you're going and you're not that person who has that gift, you still have other gifts. You'll be able to take photos and something will show somehow and eventually in the photos you take. And without fail, that's happened. I don't know if I answered the Kreskin question,
I think so.
But it
close.
Transitioned into that.
What would your ideal Halloween experience be?
My ideal Halloween experience is no doubt, and I did it for 12 years in a row. And this year, I'm celebrating my 25th anniversary of bringing fans, tourists, people who love Dracula, people who love vampires on a Dracula tour to Transylvania. That is the ultimate. The 12 years that I spent going to Romania and visiting Dracula's castle, Vlad's fortress. What it is, it's half the lore, the fantasy, the Dracula tale, and we follow in the footsteps of Bram Stoker's Dracula. The other half is history. It's the dark history of Vlad Tepes, Vlad the Impaler. And when you combine the two, it's the ultimate tour. And 25 years, people have been going to Bucharest and Sighisoara and Brasov and all these places in Romania that are one of the scariest places in the world, but fun. We combine the fun, the entertainment, the information, and it's in such a package that people come back. You know, when we go to a restaurant, it could be the greatest restaurant in the world, once in a while, something's cold. You know, it's not always a 10. I got to tell you, people come back from this Dracula tour, and it's always a 10. They always have the greatest time. They're doing a vampire vacation with people who love the same things that they love. And I think that's been a big part of the success of a lot of things that I do, whether it's the book or the Halloween Haunted Trolley or the conventions or this Dracula tour to Transylvania. It's stuff that I loved, and it's stuff that I knew others would love, and it worked out great because I try to give what I want in that. What book would I want to read? What convention guest would I want to meet? And, you know, what's the ultimate tour? What's a better thing to do than be in Transylvania on Halloween? That's the ultimate.
And I know that our Russell has been on that trip, and he talks about it a lot. So I know you can't have higher praise than having Russell talk about your tour.
And that's how we became, you know, such friends and colleagues for how many years now, meeting on the Dracula tour, staying friends, and, you know, exchanging professional stuff and friendship stuff. That's just one case. There's hundreds where people go on the tour and they exchange Halloween cards every year, or they, you know, or Christmas, they're like, hey, when are we going again? You know, to the point that people were saying, Charles, we love the Dracula tour. What else can we do that's of the same, pardon the pun, of the same vein? And I would start to say, I don't know, until we did, first it was like kind of Dracula part 2. We went to England and did all the stuff that was connected with Bram Stoker and Dracula. But we went to Whitby, which is the most gothic place in the world. We went to Cambridge. We went to the Borley Rectory, all the most haunted locations in England. And then we went to all the normal places, which were haunted too. The Tower, Big Ben, Westminster, they all have their ghost stories, and the Jack the Ripper tour. Well, people went on that. They've been on the Dracula tour, the ghost tour. Charles, what else can we do? You ready for this? We did Ireland, Scotland, Romania, of course, Hungary, Prague, East Germany, Israel, Cuba, all those places I packaged ghost tours to. And the people who had such a great time on the Dracula tour were then going to all these different tours with me. It sort of took a back, you know, a break to it when COVID hit, but I'm going to pick it up again. I got to find some new places to hit. We even did a New Orleans ghost tour weekend, which was phenomenal. I had never been there before and had such a great time.
Charles, thank you so much for coming back to Amber Live. Fascinating stories, fascinating events, and we can't wait to hear what's next on your agenda. So thank you very much, and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yes. Every Sunday's like Halloween to me because I always get scared at this point in the show because I never know what Rocco's going to give us. What's it going to be this week, Rocco?
Did I scare you? It's just me, Rocco. Listen, Halloween is almost here. It's the best time of the year. I love Halloween because you can dress up incognito. You get to meet the crazy chicks that are dressed up as something you always wanted to have sex with. and it's a good time for all. The problem is, as soon as you take them home, or in the car, or behind the dumpster, you kind of lose that Halloween vibe. But don't fret, my friends, because I got a solution for you. Introducing Rocco's Halloween Sex Toy Emporium. I got hundreds of Halloween-themed sex toys so you can get scary crazy with your Halloween treat. We got disappearing, reappearing condoms. Maybe they'll be there for the final shot, or maybe they won't. Now that's kind of scary. So you want a three-way, huh? And you're also a necrophiliac? Well, let me tempt you with one of my sex doll corpses. Your partner will love it, and then when you're done, you just throw it up in the attic for easy cleanup. And don't forget there's the always fun sex in a coffin. For you voyeurs out there, you can go to one of these books that you can summon the recently deceased so you can have all your dead family members watch you go at it. Hey, why let the fun end after only one night when you can put them in this cage and have fun all week long? For you Satanists out there, why don't you dress as an angel? That ought to freak your friends out. What does that got to do with sex? Nothing. I just thought it was fun. I even have something for my Hasidic friends out there. Be the ghost with the most. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, you do. And if you don't have a successful night meeting someone, might I suggest something from my skull line? Did they bleep that shit? So it comes with a can of lube for your creepy pleasure. So if you're looking for a trick and a treat, Rocco's Halloween Sex Toy Emporium's got you covered. Listen, you know me. I don't care how creepy, weird, and freakish you are, as long as you have fun, and I make a ton of money. All right? I'll see you at the store.
Love that Rocco.
This is episode 171 of Amber Live. Yeah, we've been doing this since March of 2020. And over that time, we've developed a lot of great friendships. And one of them is with Big J. And he sent us this Halloween greeting.
On behalf of myself and everyone at home, including Amber Live, I'd like to wish you a very happy Halloween! Stay scary, my friends, and see you next time.
Halloween, what a way to celebrate our 171st episode of Amber Live. Yep, and we'll see you next week for number 172. And now, bug and shug.
Brave. What the hell are you doing? I'm going to be a zombie for Halloween, so I'm practicing looking for brains to eat. Ah! You won't get my brains, you zombie bastard! Don't worry, Bug. I don't think you've got nothing to worry about.